Hey guys, tonight we drift backward past streetlights and porch pumpkins, past candy bowls and plastic skeletons, past the word Halloween itself. You land under a cold sky, lit only by fire. The wind smells like peat smoke and damp earth. You're standing on a hill in ancient Celtic land, and the year is ending. Not the way December ends for you now, cleanly, on a calendar, but the way a candle ends, burned down, trembling, about to go dark. You're here for Samhain. Around you, fields sit stripped and stubbled. The last sheaves of grain have been cut and carried. Livestock is being brought in close, hooves clattering over stone, breath steaming in the night air. Everyone knows what's coming. Winter here isn't an aesthetic. It's risk. Hunger, sickness, cold that chews. In this world, the line between we got through it and we didn't can be very, very thin. People move with a purpose that feels old in their bones. You watch them build a massive bonfire from oak and hawthorn branches, stacking it high like a tower the night can climb. When it finally catches, it doesn't just light the hilltop, it redraws the shapes of every face around you. Shadows leap and break apart across cloaks and cheekbones. You smell the sharp snap of sap in the wood. Sparks crackle up into the blackness and vanish fast, like tiny spirits fleeing. Samhain is more than a party, more than last harvest. This is New Year's for the ancient Celts, a turning of the cycle. The light half of the year is over. The dark half begins now. You feel it in the cold air pressing at your throat. The old year is dying in front of you, and like anything that's dying, it's making the air weird. Because here's the part that makes the night dangerous. On this night, as the world tips from light into dark, the boundary between the living and the dead thins. You're told it thins so much that a careful hand could reach right through it. You stand close to the fire and listen. Someone near you mutters that the dead can walk tonight, not as flaming skeletons or movie monsters. Nothing that dramatic. More like familiar presences. A father who didn't survive last winter. A child taken by fever. A grandmother who always swore she'd check up on you even after she was gone. It's not framed like zombies are here. It's framed like they're visiting. But it's not just them. The villagers tell you, lower voice now, that other beings slip through too. Things that aren't ancestors and definitely aren't friendly. You'll hear them called spirits, or fair folk, or the owls see. Not cute winged fairies. Older, stranger. They don't mind taking what isn't theirs. Cows, luck, people. And this is why the fire matters. The bonfire does a few jobs at once. On the outside, it's heat, light, protection. On the inside, it's medicine and contract. Cattle are driven between paired fires, so the smoke can bless them and keep sickness away during the long winter. Families carry home coals from the sacred communal fire to reignite their hearths. That new flame isn't just warm, it's sanctioned, spiritually clean, like a password against whatever's still prowling out in the dark. You're watching communal healthcare, spiritual insurance, and neighborhood watch all rolled into one blaze. Someone nudges you and hands you a bundle of herbs tied with twine. You're told to toss it into the flames and watch how it burns. You hesitate because you weren't planning on doing pyromancy tonight, but you do it anyway. The bundle flares fast and bright. The woman next to you nods solemnly and says that means protection. If it had smoldered black and stubborn, that would have been bad news. You decide to accept the compliment from the fire and not ask follow-up questions. All around, people are feasting, sharing whatever is left from the harvest. Roasted meat, barley bread, apples, cheese. You notice plates of food left out on doorsteps, and cups of drink too. This is important. That offering is not for stray dogs. That is for the unseen. Some of it is for loved ones who might come home for one night. Some of it is for the other things, the ones you do not want angry. You realize how practical that is. If something powerful crosses over and finds you remembered it, fed it, welcomed it, maybe it passes by your door without trouble. Hospitality as supernatural pest control. In one corner of the firelight, you see figures moving in animal skins. A deer's hide worn like a cloak, antlers strapped on with leather cord, a boar's jawbone repurposed as a mask. At first you think it's ceremony, and yes, that's part of it. But it's also defense. If the dead and the otherworldly are walking, you don't necessarily want them to recognize you. So you hide your face, blur your outline, pretend, just for a few hours, that you are something not worth bothering. You're watching the first faint roots of what will, thousands of years later, become dressing up for Halloween. Someone near the fire is telling a story about lights over the bog, wandering, flickering lights that try to lure travelers off the road at night, deeper and deeper into marshland. He says those aren't lights. Those are things. You are advised not to follow them, even if they look familiar, even if you think you hear your name. You notice nobody laughs. This isn't campfire, boost storytelling. This is winter survival protocol. Listen long enough, and you start to understand the mood here. It's not jump scare terror. It's respectful tension. People aren't pretending the spirit world doesn't exist. They're assuming that it does, and they're negotiating with it. This night is treaty work. Every so often the chanting swells. A druid, the community's religious authority, healer, calendar keeper, walking library, circles the fire with something burning in a shallow dish. He's murmuring blessings for the tribe, asking for protection through the cold months to come, asking for the sun to return. You feel a flicker of heat as he passes. You also feel watched, not by the people, by the night. You glance past the ring of firelight and toward the dark beyond it. The sky is moonless. The grass outside the circle disappears quickly into shadow. The stories say this is where the doorways open, at thresholds, at boundaries, at the edges of firelight. Literal edges. Your brain does that thing where it tries to convince you you're imagining movement. You're not sure you believe it. You're also not sure you don't. And that's where Samhain lives, in that exact space, in that split second of maybe. Historians still argue whether Samhain was purely spiritual, or mostly practical, or mostly social, an anchor that kept everyone calm and cooperative at the scariest, most dangerous turning point of the year. But standing here, with your face warm on one side from the fire and stung cold on the other from the wind, you can feel it working on all three levels at once. It keeps the village fed. It keeps the village together. It keeps the village brave. Someone beside you slips a small loaf of bread into your hand and tells you to eat while the fire's still high. Warm food keeps them from touching you, she whispers. You don't know who them is, and you decide you do not need to know right this second. Across the circle, a teenager dares another to walk past the stones at the edge of the hill and stand alone for a full count of 30. Everyone goes quiet, listening. The wind rises. The count stops at 12 and does not resume. The teenager returns quickly, pale, pretending it was just cold. No one calls him out. You can feel the hour tipping. The fire hisses and settles lower, turning from bright flame to a deep, steady bed of coals. People begin scooping those coals into clay pots or wrapping them in ash to carry home and relight their hearths. Household flames die on purpose tonight, then get rekindled from this shared source. One fire becomes many. One protection becomes everyone's. You follow the others back down the hill, your breath showing in small ghosts in front of your face. Behind you, the last sparks drift up and fade into the black. The year in their eyes is done. The new one has already begun. At your door, you pause. The air feels different on this side of Samhain. Colder, yes, but also looser, like the world you know has stretched and then only mostly snapped back into place. You can still feel the thinned edge of it against your skin, humming. Inside, the cottage is dark and waiting. You kneel, set your ember into the waiting hearth, and watch new flame wake up and crawl over dry kindling. Gold light blooms across the room. For a moment, that little fire is the only thing holding back a world of winter, hunger, and whatever still might be walking outside. You sit close. You keep watch. You don't fully relax. Not yet. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease forward. We're not staying in this night. We're going to follow it slowly, steadily, as it changes shape century after century, until it turns into the thing you know. The fire that began on that Celtic hill never really goes out. It just changes shape. You wake up to the same cold dawn the villagers once feared. Only now, it's still thousands of years before Halloween becomes a word. The bonfire is a mound of glowing embers. Smoke drifts through the valley. The feast is over, but the silence feels alive. You notice something curious. Nobody sweeps up the ashes. They're left there, smudged into the dirt like protection. People pass quietly, dropping scraps of food into the glow, a piece of bread, a curl of meat, a sip of ale poured from a jug. None of it's waste. It's an offering for whoever might still be wandering home. You can feel that idea pressing against the air. The dead aren't gone. They're just nearby. It's both comforting and unnerving. You start to realize that for these people, the veil between worlds isn't a poetic metaphor. It's a household fact. Doors and thresholds matter. Fires matter. Silence matters. You walk down a narrow path between huts. Smoke rises from new hearths where last night's sacred coals are burning. Each home smells of peat, barley, and something sweet, maybe cider. On every doorstep, someone's left a small plate. A slice of bread here, an apple there. You lean closer and see how carefully it's placed, as if to say, we remember. We're still grateful. Don't be angry. That's the rhythm of Samhain morning. Neither mourning nor celebration. It's maintenance. People caring for two worlds at once. Later, you follow a group out to the fields. The frost sparkles faintly over what's left of the crops. Someone murmurs that the owls see the hidden people pass over the land today, blessing or blighting it depending on their mood. The group scatters handfuls of grain into the wind as an offering. To keep them kind, a man says, though his tone makes it sound more like to keep them occupied. You ask quietly who they really are. He shrugs. Some say they're the dead. Some say they're older than the dead. He gestures toward a mound in the distance, a soft hill shaped like a sleeping giant. They live there, he says. Don't build near it. Don't shout near it. And if you hear music under the ground, don't follow it. His smile is small, not joking at all. That's what passes for religion here. Boundaries, rules, and respect. You realize that's what Samhain truly means to them. Not fear of death, but acknowledgement of it. The living and the dead take turns using the same space, like roommates who understand it's rude to overstay. By nightfall, smoke has settled across the valley like a gray blanket. Fires are still burning low. Families gather again, not for another feast, but for stories. You sit near the edge of a group, a little apart, try not to look too alive. An older woman begins speaking in a tone so calm, it's almost hypnotic. She tells of a traveler who met a woman on the road one Samhain night. A beautiful woman with long white hair and eyes like water. She invited him to dance, and he did. When he woke, it was morning, and the world around him had changed. The village he knew was gone, the path overgrown. He had danced with the Sidhe, she says, and 100 years had passed. No one laughs. Everyone listens like it might happen to them. That's the secret heartbeat of this night. Time folds, reality blurs, and stories become maps. The people here don't separate myth from history. They treat both like weather, things you can predict a little, but never control. You stare into the coals and think how familiar that feels. Even now, every culture has its version. A night when the invisible presses close, when memory has teeth, when you realize you're part of a story bigger than your name. Historians still argue whether the Celts thought of Samhain as a festival for the dead, or simply a year's turning, with death naturally included. But hardly matters. You can see how those ideas start blending. Practical chores becoming sacred gestures, fear becoming tradition, memory becoming protection. By late night, the last offerings are made. Someone tosses the bones from the evening meal into the embers, another small ritual of release. The bones crackle and glow, then vanish. The fire sighs like it's full. You step outside the ring of light for a moment. The cold bites hard now, the kind that gets into your lungs. The stars are unbelievable, bright, close, watchful. Every story you just heard suddenly makes sense. The universe doesn't feel empty here. It feels crowded. You think about your own time, about the electric lights that keep you from ever seeing stars like this. You think how strange it is that so much brightness can make the world smaller. Here, in this quiet dark, everything feels infinite. Back in the village, people are beginning to drift towards sleep. The embers burn steady. Somewhere, a door creaks, and you imagine, just for a heartbeat, that a shadow slips inside. Someone's ancestor, checking that the offering was made. You hope they're pleased. There's a low, mournful sound from the hills. Wind or something older, it's hard to tell. The air hums like it did last night, like the world's skin is still thin. Before you go inside, you look back toward the mound where the man said the Aussie live. The moon has finally climbed above it, silvering the grass. For a second, you think you see movement, a shimmer, a flicker, as if someone's lifting a curtain and peeking through. You blink, and it's gone. You breathe out. Maybe, you whisper, "I'll just leave another apple." You place it gently on the cold ground, step backward, and close your door before the night can answer. The fire inside greets you again, warm and ordinary, but the sound of the wind outside carries something familiar, that whisper of thinness. The season has turned, but the space between worlds hasn't closed completely yet. You can feel it pulsing in the dark, steady as a heartbeat, an invitation that will echo down the centuries. The first festival of the dead has ended. The idea of Halloween has just been born. Morning breaks slower here, heavy with mist. You wake to the smell of wet ash and the low murmur of people sweeping mud from their thresholds. Samhain has ended, but its echo lingers like smoke on skin. You follow the sound of chanting to the hill again. Smaller fire now, smaller crowd. The ones who climb today aren't here for celebration. They're here for prophecy. At the center of the hill stands a group dressed in white wool, faces streaked with soot. The Druids. Their presence changes everything. Silence ripples outward as they begin their work. You watch them pace in circles around the dying embers, murmuring phrases in a rhythm that feels half human, half elemental. They aren't praying exactly. They're reading. You notice the bones scattered near the fire, the remains of last night's feast. A druid picks one up with deliberate care, holds it over the coals until it blackens, then drops it into a clay bowl filled with water. Everyone leans closer. The surface ripples, and for a moment, the reflection seems to twist on its own. He studies it, nods slightly, then announces what he sees: a long winter, but no famine. Relief ripples through the crowd like wind through grass. You realize this is more than superstition. It's data. Fire and smoke are their instruments. These people don't separate science from magic. They read the world the way you'd read a weather forecast. The bone cracks just so, omen of rain. The smoke blows east, omen of calm. It's a system older than measurement, but not without logic. The Druids just interpret it through poetry. You stay near the back, trying to look unimportant. The leader of the circle lifts a handful of ash, tosses it skyward, and watches which way it drifts. The gods are quiet, he says finally, and the crowd exhales. Quiet is good. Quiet means no wrath. One woman beside you whispers that her family's hearth fire burned blue this morning. She's smiling when she says it, proud. Blue flame means favor, she tells you, though no one agrees what kind. Warmth, protection, maybe fertility. You think of how much of human history has depended on reading small, uncertain signs and hoping they're kind. The Druid moves from house to house after that, carrying a torch lit from the sacred embers. Each family kneels as he approaches, hands pressed together in gratitude. The same coals that burned away the old year now light every new hearth in the valley. It's more than a practical gesture. It's connection. Every home part of one fire, one breath. When he reaches your doorway, he looks at you for a long time, eyes pale, unreadable. Remember, he says, the dark is not the enemy. It's the rest between notes. Then he passes the flame to your hands. You hold it, unsure whether he's talking about winter or death. Maybe both. That night, with the new fire burning low, the village falls into a quiet rhythm. Food is simpler now. Porridge, broth, roots pulled from frost. People gather around hearths to mend clothes, carve tools, tell stories that stretch the length of the night. The world outside the door might be haunted, but inside, it's held together by warmth and repetition. Someone tells a story about a man who tried to cheat Samhain's rules. He mocked the Druids, refused to leave offerings, and laughed when his neighbors covered their faces. On the last night of the festival, he walked home without a torch. They found him the next morning standing on the road, alive but changed, his hair white, his eyes blank. He couldn't speak, only point toward the woods. They walked with him, the storyteller says. No one asks who they are. You realize that stories here aren't for amusement. They're social law. Every tale reminds people where not to go, what not to forget. The line between parable and warning is thin as mist. Later, you follow a few villagers to the river. The water looks black in the moonlight, its surface shivering with light. They float small candles on bark boats, tiny lights drifting downstream. Someone murmurs that these are for those who didn't make it through the past year. You feel the air shift again, the same hum from the hilltop fire. Something watching, listening. But the mood isn't fear this time. It's gratitude. The villagers bow their heads, the candles bobbing away like little souls on a journey. You wonder how much of this is ritual, and how much is love disguised as order. Maybe that's the same thing. Historians still argue about the Druids, how much they truly knew, how much we've guessed. Their writings vanished, if they ever wrote anything at all. What survives are fragments, filtered through Roman eyes centuries later. Some describe them as philosophers, others as sorcerers, others as rebels. But standing here, in this quiet valley, you see something simpler. They're translators, the ones who explain the invisible, the bridge between what's known and what's guessed. As the villagers return to their homes, you stay near the river, watching the last candle fade into the bend. The water looks endless. The air tastes of iron and ash. Behind you, the Druids' chant fades into distance, swallowed by the night. You close your eyes and picture how this moment will echo. You can almost see its afterimage stretching forward, through centuries, through changing gods and languages, through all the layers of meaning that will be added later. These people don't know it, but they've built the skeleton of something immortal, a ritual that survives conquest, conversion, migration, and marketing, a night that belongs to memory itself. The coals in your hands have cooled to black dust. You let them fall through your fingers and whisper a promise to the dark. We'll keep the fire alive. Because you will. You all will. You walk home along the riverbank. The mist is thicker now, curling low over the ground, swallowing the path ahead. Somewhere in it, something moves, not close enough to see, but close enough to feel. You don't speed up, and you don't stop. You simply nod to the dark as you pass. Respect, not fear. By the time you reach your door, the first snow has started to fall, soft flakes dissolving on your sleeve, faint as breath. The season has changed. The world tilts quietly toward winter, and with it, toward the next shape of the story. The snow doesn't last. By the time the wind changes, the hills are damp again, alive with fog. You stand outside the same village, but something about it feels different. The bonfires are smaller now, still burning, still sacred, but the people's laughter has softened. It's the calm after the ritual, the quiet where customs start to harden into tradition. You wander toward a group of children playing near the edge of the field. They're chasing each other with sticks, laughing, shouting something that sounds like a rhyme. When they see you, one of them stops and lifts a crude mask. Animal hide stretched over a bent frame of twigs. The mouth gapes open in an uneven grin. So the dead can't tell who we are, she says proudly, before running off again. That's the logic here. Disguised not as performance, but as protection. The masks, the soot-smeared faces, the animal skins, their camouflage. If spirits walk among the living, it's safer to look like one of them. Better to blur your outline than stand out. It's strange how fast this idea spreads. In the nights following Samhain, the whole village begins wearing masks. Not all the time, just when the air feels thin. Hunters wrap themselves in furs before crossing the woods. Women step out after dark with veils pulled low. You realize you're watching the seed of something that will, millennia later, become the costume tradition. Back then, it was about hiding. Later, it'll become about becoming. Inside one of the houses, you see another mask. This one carved from wood, painted with ashes and ochre. It's hanging above the hearth like a guardian. The woman who lives there nods toward it and says, "He keeps watch." You ask who he is, and she shrugs. Whatever's outside, that's the pattern of belief here. Broad, practical, unpretentious. Nobody tries to name everything. Naming can summon, and summoning invites attention. They prefer boundaries, inside and outside, light and dark, seen and unseen. The rituals are less about worship and more about good manners toward the unknown. The nights grow longer. The fields turn hard with frost. You feel how the rhythm of life here depends entirely on those old firelit rules. Offer food to the dead. Hide your face from the restless. Keep your flame pure. You think of how modern people hang decorations and tell ghost stories without believing in them. The Celts didn't have that luxury. Theirs was a world where belief and survival shared a roof. On one cold night, you find yourself walking the perimeter of the village. There's a man standing by the main path, tossing embers from a clay pot into the air, mumbling something under his breath. You ask what he's doing, and he tells you he's lighting the way back. For who? Whichever ones remember me kindly, he says, and doesn't explain further. Somewhere between faith and loneliness, a ritual is born. Over time, that gesture changes. You start seeing carved shapes placed near doorways, turnips hollowed out with rough tools, faces cut into them, a candle or coal burning inside. At first, it's purely practical, a light for travelers, a charm to keep the hungry spirits away. But it feels symbolic too, like giving the darkness its own face so it doesn't need to borrow yours. You crouch near one of those carved lanterns, watching the light tremble through its crude smile. The air smells of earth and smoke. For a fleeting moment, you feel like you're being smiled at, not by the person who carved it, but by the night itself. As months turn to years, you see the same customs repeat, smoothing into habit. Fires, feasts, masks, offerings. Every Samhain looks a little more organized, a little more like tradition. Children grow up knowing exactly what to do and why, because their parents say, "We've always done it this way." The first true religion is memory. Historians still argue how much of this was spiritual and how much was psychological, a way to make sense of the long winter, to turn fear into something actionable. But when you watch them, you understand. It doesn't matter whether the spirits are real. The comfort is, that's the point. You step inside one of the huts. A man is carving bone into charms while his daughter hums beside him. She's threading tiny teeth onto a string, making what looks like a necklace. For luck, you ask. For hiding, she replies. If the dead can't count your teeth, they can't find you later. You stare for a second, unsure whether to laugh or shiver. She grins, a gap where one tooth is missing. They don't like gaps, she says. Outside, the wind rises suddenly, sweeping down the hill with a low moan that makes the huts creak. People rush to check their fires, throw herbs into the flames. The smell of burning sage and heather fills the air. Someone starts to sing, softly, rhythmically, like an anchor against the sound of the storm. The song is simple, repetitive, part lullaby, part spell. You join in, mostly to feel less alone. The wind howls harder, rattling everything not nailed down. The lanterns flicker, but hold steady. And then, just as quickly as it began, the storm fades. The village exhales as one. Someone murmurs, "They were passing by." It's then you realize something profound. Every gesture, the masks, the songs, the fires, isn't about power. It's about negotiation. A constant, careful balance between awe and agency. Humanity's first attempt to talk to the dark instead of fight it. You watch as the children put their masks back on and chase each other through the mud, their laughter bright and sharp. A little boy trips, lands in the dirt, and his mask slides off. He looks up at you, face flushed, grinning. For a split second, the way the torchlight hits his eyes makes them look wrong, older, like something else is looking back through him. You blink, and it's gone. Just a boy again, running toward his friends. When the night quiets, the fires settle into glowing coals. The masks come off, stacked neatly beside beds. But the habit will stay. Once you learn that hiding can keep you safe, you don't forget it. You just rename it. Centuries later, that instinct will survive through conquerors, through religions, through generations who've never even heard the word Samhain. They'll still carve faces into lanterns. They'll still cover their own faces in paint and fabric, pretending not to be themselves for one night. They won't remember why, but they'll still do it. The wind shifts again, cold and metallic. You hear a faint whisper, like laughter carried from far away. You look out over the valley, where tiny dots of fire still glow in the dark. From this height, they look almost like candles, small, human defiance burning against an endless night. The world is learning how to play with fear, and it's never going to stop. By the time the next age rolls over, the bonfires are still burning, but the horizon is changing. The Romans have come. You hear them before you see them. The clang of metal, the thud of hooves, voices shouting in a language that slices through the air like cold iron. The Celts watch from their hills, clutching charms that suddenly feel smaller than ever. You're standing at the crossroads of worlds. The Romans bring their roads, their gods, their order. And with them come two autumn festivals. Feralia, a day for honoring the dead, and Pomona, a harvest feast dedicated to a goddess of fruit and orchards. Apples, in particular, they love their apples. It doesn't take long before the old and new begin to mingle. Samhain is too deeply woven into the land to vanish. The Romans, practical as ever, decide it's easier to blend than to banish. You watch the exchange happen not in war, but in habit. The Romans bring apples and vines. The Celts bring fire and masks. Together, they build a strange kind of peace. In one village, you see people lighting their familiar hilltop fires. But now, beside the smoke, bowls of fruit gleam in the firelight. Apples bob gently in water basins while children laugh, dunking their faces to grab one with their teeth. The old ritual of divination sneaks in through play. Whoever catches an apple, they say, will be lucky in love that year. You realize you've just witnessed the birth of apple bobbing. Not a party game yet, not exactly innocent, but already tinged with prophecy. Apples are Pomona's symbol, yes, but they've also become tools of fate. Bite the fruit, taste the future. Nearby, a druid and a Roman priest argue softly by the fire. One speaks of the gods in the soil, the other speaks of the gods above. Their gestures look different, but their words, thanksgiving, fertility, remembrance, sound almost the same. It's not conquest you're hearing, it's negotiation. Religion learning to share the stage. You can smell roasted barley and crushed fruit. Someone pours cider into clay cups and offers you one. It's sweet, thick, and faintly spiced. Pomona's offering mixed with Samhain's warmth. The taste lingers, strange and familiar at once. You wonder if this is how most traditions are born, not by decree, but by flavor. The Romans bring something else too. Structure. Calendars. Festivals marked by law. Time made measurable. The Celts had lived by seasons and stories. Now there's a rhythm carved into stone. Samhain becomes less of a single night and more of a season. Harvest, reflection, preparation. It gains shape, borders, a schedule. But shape doesn't mean safety. The Romans tolerate Celtic customs as long as they don't threaten control. You notice the Druids fading from public life. Their fire rituals, once central, begin to look like superstition in the eyes of the empire. Still, you see small gatherings at dusk, quiet, hidden, stubborn. Old prayers whispered beneath Latin hymns. It's not rebellion. It's continuity. One night, you follow a family to an orchard on the edge of a Roman villa. The trees are heavy with the last of their fruit, the air humming with bees too sluggish to flee the cold. They tie ribbons to the branches, murmuring blessings for the next year's harvest. The father places an apple at the base of a tree and whispers something about his mother, gone 3 winters past. It hits you. The dead have followed them here too. Feralia and Samhain overlap, one remembering the ancestors, the other fearing their return. The line between reverence and dread is paper thin. People start lighting candles in windows instead of open fires, smaller flames that feel more personal, more controlled. The world is learning how to contain its fear, to domesticate it. Historians still debate how much Roman influence really transformed the Celtic festival. Some argue it was minor. Others believe this was the turning point that softened pagan ritual into something closer to what we recognize today. But standing here, you can feel the transition happening in real time. Not through doctrine, but through dinner. The language around you shifts too. The Latin word for festival, festum, starts to slip into the old Celtic tongue. Holy days multiply. Every village, every household begins to name its own. The gods become more crowded, but also more local. The boundary between pagan and Roman blurs until it doesn't matter whose deity you're thanking, as long as you're still thanking someone. You walk through the streets of a growing settlement, hearing two kinds of music blend, flutes and drums on one side, Roman strings on the other. Smoke from different fires mixes in the air. For a brief moment, it feels like the world itself is celebrating survival. At the edge of town, children are still wearing masks. Their costumes are simpler now. No longer full animal skins, just veils or soot-smudged cheeks. They run door to door, laughing, waving sticks tipped with glowing coals from the communal fire. Light for the dark, they shout, the chant bouncing through the night like charm. You realize the core of the ritual has stayed the same. Sharing fire, feeding spirits, finding laughter and fear. But now it carries the scent of apples instead of oak smoke, and the rhythm of a growing empire beneath its feet. As the night deepens, you look around at this new hybrid world. The Celtic wildness hasn't died, it's adapted. The Romans, for all their authority, have absorbed as much as they've imposed. And together, they've made something neither side could have predicted. A night that's both solemn and joyful, sacred and playful, a dance between survival and spectacle. You close your eyes and hear the whisper of leaves shifting in the orchard, the soft pop of fire, the laughter of children splashing apples from a basin. The gods, old and new, are sharing the same table now. The ghosts are still watching. And you're standing in the middle of a tradition, learning how to last forever. Centuries slide past like drifting smoke, and the bonfires burn lower. The Roman Empire stretches, then stumbles, then cracks. Roads crumble, armies withdraw, languages tangle together. What remains, here, in the misty edges of the old Celtic lands, is memory. You wake to the sound of bells instead of horns. It's the 7th century now, and the air feels different, quieter, almost disciplined. Crosses stand where sacred stones once did. The people still light fires in autumn, still whisper to the dark, but now they cross themselves before they do it. A new faith has arrived, and it doesn't leave much room for old gods. Christianity moves gently at first. Missionaries walking barefoot into villages, carrying candles instead of swords. You see one now, a monk named Aidan, murmuring prayers as he sprinkles holy water near a smoldering Samhain fire. Keep the flame, he tells the villagers, but light it for the saints. That's how it always happens. The new world doesn't erase the old one, it renames it. Over time, the church learns the same lesson the Romans did. Replacing traditions never works as well as repurposing them. So instead of banning Samhain, they absorb it. By the 8th century, Pope Gregory III declares November 1st All Saints' Day, a holy day to honor every saint and martyr. The night before, October 31st, becomes All Hallows' Eve. You can almost hear the linguistic gears turning. All Hallows' Eve. Halloween. Halloween. The name is new, but the bones underneath are ancient. Still, people don't let go of their ghosts easily. As you walk through the countryside, you see how the two worlds overlap like mismatched glass. In one cottage, a woman places candles in every window for the souls of the faithful departed. In the next, her neighbor does the same, but whispers her ancestor's name as she lights each wick. Holy souls, restless spirits, saints, shades. No one's quite sure where one ends and the other begins. Historians still argue whether this blending was deliberate strategy or accidental poetry. You suspect both. The church wanted structure. The people wanted comfort. The result was something strange and beautiful, a holiday balance between fear and faith. In a local churchyard, you see the new rituals take shape. Bells ring through the night to comfort souls in purgatory. Monks chant prayers for the dead. Children follow behind, carrying small lanterns, singing in soft, rehearsed voices. The light from their candles trembles over headstones slick with dew. But out in the fields, beyond a church's reach, the old magic still whispers. Families still leave food on doorsteps, though now they call it charity instead of offering. Farmers still burn fires, but they dedicate them to Saint Michael, not to the sun. The Owls have become the hidden ones, folded into local folklore, reimagined as devils, angels, or simply the others. The labels shift, but the mystery stays put. You find a gathering on a hilltop one chilly night. The villagers stand around a cross made of wood, candles flickering at its base. A priest reads from scripture, his voice calm but commanding. Yet at the edges of the crowd, you spot a few older faces, muttering something under their breath. Not the priest's Latin, but older words, older syllables. A hush falls when he glances their way. He knows what they're doing, but he says nothing. Maybe he understands that belief is like water. It finds its own path. You can smell the blending of worlds even in the air. Incense and peat smoke, sanctity and superstition. Later, you follow a young monk to the church's storeroom. He opens a crate filled with wax candles, silver bells, and small, round cakes, sweet, spiced, marked with a cross on top. Soul cakes, he says, smiling faintly. They're baked for All Hallows' Eve and given to anyone who prays for the souls of the dead. The rich bake them by the dozen. The poor walk from door to door collecting them. You watch a group of children start their rounds. They knock gently on each door, singing a small rhyme. Soul, soul, an apple or two. If you haven't an apple, a cake will do. 1 for Peter, 2 for Paul, and 3 for him who made us all. Home after home, they're welcomed with bread, fruit, and sweet wine. They thank the host, murmur blessings, and vanish into the fog. You realize what you're seeing, the faint, flickering ancestor of trick-or-treating. But tonight, it's about grace, not mischief. Every cake, every candle, every whispered prayer is meant to ease a soul's journey. You can almost imagine the dead drifting through the streets like fog, pausing at doorways warmed by human kindness. The church frames it as charity. The people feel it as connection. And somewhere between the two, a holiday begins to evolve into something larger than either faith or fear, a ritual of remembering. At the same time, though, suspicion grows. Not everyone trusts these blurry edges. Some priests warn that too much of the old ways remain, that dressing up, lighting fires, and leaving food for unseen guests are doorways for the devil. The word pagan starts to sting. Still, no decree or sermon can fully extinguish the spark. People adapt. They call their bonfires All Hallows lights. They hang lanterns to guide souls, not spirits. They carve crosses into their turnip lanterns, hoping to disguise the pagan roots as Christian devotion. You can almost smile at the irony. The masks now meant to fool the church instead of ghosts. By the time the last candle flickers out, you can see the pattern repeating, just as the Celts once disguised themselves to survive the spirits. Now the old traditions disguise themselves to survive religion. Every change, every layer of translation, keeps the same pulse alive. You step outside into the cold night. The stars are sharp, unblinking. The church bell tolls again, slow and solemn. The wind carries the faint smell of burning herbs, maybe from a house further down, or someone still hedging their bets with an ancient blessing. You walk past the graveyard, where the candlelight wavers on wet stone, and for a moment you think you see movement among the shadows, a figure pausing by one of the candles, looking almost grateful before fading into the dark. Maybe faith doesn't replace magic. Maybe it just teaches it new words. And somewhere, far in the distance, another bonfire flares on a hill. The year turns again. The dead are still listening. The centuries keep folding over each other, and the fires change hands again. It's the Middle Ages now. Europe thick with church bells, superstition, and a constant sense that heaven and hell are never far away. You open your eyes in a small stone village where the air smells of smoke and wet straw. A bell is ringing low, slow, and steady. It's All Hallows Eve again, but the world has learned new rhythms for it. The streets are narrow and muddy, torchlight flickering on the slick stones. Doorways are marked with chalk crosses. Candles gleam in cottage windows, trembling in the draft. Somewhere in the dark, children are singing. Their voices are faint at first, thin, sweet, haunting. You follow the sound through the fog and find them in a cluster, each carrying a small lantern made of a hollowed-out turnip. They knock on a door, bow slightly when it opens, and chant, "A soul cake, please, good missus, a soul cake. 1 for Peter, 2 for Paul, 3 for him who made us all." The woman inside smiles wearily and drops small, round cakes into their cloth bags. "Blessings on your house." The children murmur before wandering on. You're watching the early ritual of souling. On this night, the poor and the young go door to door offering prayers for the dead in exchange for food. The prayers are currency, the cakes, communion. And for one brief night, the living trade kindness on behalf of the lost. It's practical and mystical all at once. Christian in form, pagan in spirit. The idea is simple. Every soul in purgatory needs a nudge toward heaven. Every cake, every candle, every whispered prayer can push them closer to the light. Inside one house, a family kneels beside their fire. The father recites a psalm. The mother arranges apples and milk on the table for wandering souls. She glances at the window more than once. You can tell she doesn't just mean the metaphorical kind. In the square, another crowd gathers around a bonfire. Only now it's smaller, contained in an iron grate. The church allows it, but insists it's for purification, not celebration. "A light for the saints," says the priest, though his voice doesn't quite reach the laughter of the crowd. It's the same pattern you've seen for centuries. The people follow the rules, but quietly twist them back toward their roots. The prayers for souls sound suspiciously like the old blessings for ancestors. The light for the saints burns suspiciously like the Samhain fire. Faith and folklore share the same flame, each pretending not to notice the other. You watch the children circle the fire, their lanterns bobbing like tiny ghosts. They giggle when the wind blows their candles out, and one boy smudges soot across his face in mock fright. "Hide from the souls," he shouts, and the others scream with delight. The adults scold him half-heartedly, but smile as they do. You can feel it, the ancient instinct turning into play. By midnight, the prayers have thinned into murmurs. You walk past the churchyard, where rows of candles glow before weathered crosses. The wax is melted down the stone, pooling like pale tears. The graves themselves look almost alive in the flickering light, as though the earth is breathing under them. Someone starts to sing again, low and steady. May all poor souls find rest this night, and wake to everlasting light. The melody drifts through the fog and hangs there, heavy and tender. It's beautiful in a weary way, the sound of people bargaining with eternity, using whatever language they can. Historians still debate how much of medieval Halloween was spiritual devotion and how much was sheer survival. You can sense both in the air. Winter meant death. To care for the dead was to protect the living, to remind the universe that you hadn't forgotten your place in its hierarchy. It's less religion and more insurance policy. Still, the night has its playful edges. After the prayers are said, older children sneak out again, wearing masks of cloth and soot. They knock on doors pretending to be spirits demanding offerings. It's mischief, but it's tolerated. Everyone remembers that the line between joke and omen is thin tonight. Someone tosses them apples. Someone else leaves ale on the stoop for the fair ones. Laughter mixes with nervous glances. You pass a tavern where locals whisper about witches seen flying over the marsh. You can tell they half believe it. One man swears his cow's milk turned sour after a woman refused to join the evening prayers. Another tells of lights moving through the forest at midnight. The church calls it blasphemy. The people call it Tuesday. What's fascinating is how naturally these contradictions coexist. The same woman who kneels before the Virgin statue at dawn might scatter salt by her door at dusk to keep the dead from coming in. She sees no conflict, only layers of safety. You linger at a doorway where a family has just finished their meal. The fire crackles softly, the last of the candles guttering in their cups. On the table, one chair is left empty, a small plate untouched beside it. For our Michael, the mother murmurs, tracing a cross in the air. He'll find his way home. You wonder how many houses tonight are doing the same, leaving room for those who can't stay but might still visit. In that thought lies the entire heart of the holiday. The idea that death is not departure, only distance. Outside, the fog thickens, swallowing the road. The last singers have gone home. The air is cold enough that your breath looks like smoke. For a moment, you think you see lanterns moving among the gravestones, slow, deliberate, too high to belong to any child. Then the church bell rings once, low and final, and the lights vanish. The town goes still. You realize that these people, with their prayers and cakes and flickering candles, have built a bridge across millennia, one that still exists in your time, even if no one remembers who laid the first stone. You turn away from the graveyard and look toward the horizon. Somewhere, in a century you can't yet see, this quiet ritual will turn noisy again, filled with masks and laughter and things that go bump on purpose. But for now, the firelight softens. The air still hums with the breath of those who came before, and you can almost hear them whisper, "Don't forget us." You won't. The air thickens with smoke and fear. You wake again in the later Middle Ages, somewhere between plague years and superstition, a world where shadows have teeth and reason is still learning to walk upright. The candlelight flickers across stone walls. Outside, the wind drags along the thatch roofs, and every creak sounds like a whisper. It's autumn again, and the village smells of tallow, damp wool, and boiled herbs. Halloween, or All Hallows' Eve, as people call it now, has become a night of both devotion and dread. Inside each home, candles burn low, wax pooling like melted bone. The living pray for their dead, but they also fear them. The prayers have gotten louder, as though volume could keep ghosts at bay. You walk through the narrow lanes and see the signs of what fear has done. Cats, especially black ones, are treated with suspicion now. Once, they were house guardians, protectors of grain from rats. Now, people whisper that their eyes hold demons. You pass one sitting calmly on a fence post, its yellow gaze cutting through the fog. A woman nearby spits over her shoulder and mutters an old charm. The idea of witches has taken hold. You can feel it simmering in the air, half rumor, half hysteria. It starts innocently enough. Someone's cow dies unexpectedly. A child falls ill. People need an explanation, and the human mind, as always, prefers a culprit to chaos. Soon, that old woman who lives alone by the woods isn't just odd. She's dangerous. You stop by a cottage and hear a priest's voice through the open window. Stay vigilant, he warns. Satan walks abroad on this night, for the veil is thin, and his servants with him. The villagers nod solemnly, though half of them will still sprinkle salt and hang rowan branches by their doors after the sermon. Faith and fear never cancel each other out. They just overlap. Later, you find yourself in a candlelit room where a small group gathers around a table. The air is heavy with incense. A young woman in the corner whispers a charm for love, peeling an apple in one long spiral and tossing the skin over her shoulder to see if it lands in the shape of her future husband's initial. Her friends giggle nervously, half mocking, half believing. They don't know it, but they're echoing Pomona's old fruit magic, wearing centuries of history like an invisible cloak. The room grows quiet when a gust of wind blows the door open. Someone gasps, crosses themselves, and relights the candle. The souls are passing, a man murmurs. They all nod, pretending calm. You understand the look in their eyes. That sharp, ancient question, what if it's true? Outside, the world feels electric. The night hums with possibility, like a string pulled too tight. You pass the churchyard again, the same stones you've seen across centuries, though now they're surrounded by iron gates. Protection against grave robbers, but also, they say, against whatever might climb out. Down by the river, children run wild in the dark, daring each other to shout into the water where spirits live. One boy throws a stone and swears he sees a pale hand break the surface. The others laugh too loudly to be convincing. They're learning to love fear the way their ancestors learned to survive it. Later, you find a group gathered around a bonfire at the edge of town. The flames twist upward, fierce and red, illuminating faces both awed and anxious. The priest calls it purification fire, but you can tell it's something older. A girl tosses a bundle of herbs into the blaze and whispers, for protection. Another throws in a lock of hair to keep sickness away. The rituals change names, not purposes. The church keeps a close watch. Across the continent, trials for witchcraft grow more frequent. Sometimes they're local quarrels dressed in holy words. Sometimes they're pure panic. Either way, October becomes a dangerous month to stand out. The same night that celebrates saints also condemns sinners. You can feel the contradiction pressing like a weight in the air. One evening, you visit a scholar's study, a monk with ink-stained fingers, writing by candlelight. His books are filled with questions. Are ghosts permitted by God? Are witches real? Are dreams messages or madness? His quill hesitates over each answer. You ask what he believes. He sighs. Fear is easier to preach than wonder, he says softly. Then he closes the book. That sentence lingers in you like an ember. Historians still argue whether the witch hunts and superstitions were born from religion or desperation. Maybe both. The plague, famine, war, all gave people reasons to seek control. Halloween became a pressure valve, a night to let out fear before it consumed the rest of the year. But it also became an excuse to hurt the powerless. You walk again through the village after midnight. Smoke rises from every chimney. Windows glow faintly behind shutters. Somewhere, A baby cries. Somewhere else. A bell rings once, for reasons no one explains. The moon glints off the wet road, and in that reflection you see movement. A shape, pale and shifting, crossing the street without sound. You stop breathing. The shape pauses, tilts its head toward you, and vanishes into the mist. You tell yourself it's fog, trick of the firelight, your own breath, but deep down, something ancient stirs. You remember the hill, the fire, the voices whispering that the veil grows thin. Inside the nearest house, people are still awake. They sit by the hearth, telling stories about witches who turn into hares, ghosts that knock 3 times before they enter, lights that lead travelers astray. Every story ends the same way, with a charm, a prayer, or a laugh that sounds too brittle to be comfort. Halloween has become a night of contradictions, sacred and profane, protective and perilous. The church claims it, but the people still shape it. They've turned fear into folklore, folklore into ritual, ritual into endurance. You walk out of the village, the air heavy with smoke and stories. In the distance, wolves howl. Somewhere behind you, a door shuts fast, and the bolt slides home. For now, at least, the living will sleep, but only with one eye open. The wind sharpens, and the centuries shift again. The world you wake into is one of sermons and suspicion, where bonfires have new meanings and saints have new names. It's the age of reform, the 16th and 17th centuries, and Europe is splitting in half. Where faith once blended with folklore, it now burns under scrutiny. You stand in an English village, smaller than you remember, but louder in its devotion. Church bells ring, not in celebration, but in warning. The Reformation is sweeping through, and the Church of England is pulling away from Rome. The air itself feels argumentative. People are tired of middlemen between themselves and God, tired of saints, candles, and holy cakes. The bonfires that once burned for Samhain, then for All Hallows, are now called idolatry. But fear doesn't vanish, it mutates. You watch a priest preach to a crowd near the churchyard. He gestures toward the horizon, where smoke from a burning pile rises thick and bitter. That's for falsehood, he says. No more fires for saints. No more prayers for the dead. They are gone to their judgment. We'll not bribe heaven with cakes and bells. The villagers nod, but you can see something in their eyes, a flicker of nostalgia, maybe even guilt. Ritual doesn't die easy. That night, the people stay indoors. The old ways are outlawed now, but silence feels unnatural. When the wind howls, doors stay bolted. The dead still walk in stories, even if the priest says they don't. You pass a house where someone, despite the new rules, has left bread and milk on the windowsill. They'll deny it if asked, of course. The bread will be gone by morning, and everyone will agree not to mention it. Halloween, though no one calls it that yet, has gone underground. And then, something new happens. A name begins to echo through the night. Guy Fawkes. You blink, because this is where the holiday takes another turn. One born not from harvest or religion, but from politics. It's 1605, and London trembles with the news of the gunpowder plot. Catholics have tried to blow up Parliament, to kill the king. They failed, and the public celebration that follows is pure, vengeful relief. Every November 5th, fires blaze again. Not for the dead, not for saints, but for survival. Remember the 5th of November. Children chant, tossing effigies of Fawkes into the flames. The smell of smoke, the laughter, the thrill of danger. It all feels suspiciously familiar. The old bonfires have found a new excuse. You realize that this, too, is Halloween in disguise. The name is different, the meaning changed, But the rhythm, the communal fire, the masks, the controlled chaos, still beats underneath. It's as if humanity keeps returning to the same chord, no matter what melody it pretends to play. Back in the countryside, the season of All Hallows survives in fragments. Villagers still tell stories about spirits that wander before winter. They still carve lanterns from turnips, though now they're said to frighten away Catholics or witches instead of fair folk. Fear, it seems, is endlessly adaptable. You walk down a dirt path and see a small group of children carrying those crude lanterns. The wind blows, their candles gutter, and one boy grins at you through the jagged holes of his carved turnip. Jack's watching, he says, then runs ahead. That's when you first hear the legend of Stingy Jack, a drunkard, a trickster, a man too wicked for heaven and too clever for hell. The story goes that he trapped the devil in a coin, bargained his way out of damnation, and wandered the earth ever since, with only a hollowed turnip and a coal from hell to light his way. You smile, because there it is, the first flicker of Jack-o'-lantern, the face carved to mimic his ghostly lamp, the fire to keep him away. Pagan fire turned Roman fruit, turned Christian light, turned folklore again. The story loops endlessly, always finding a new costume. Historians still argue about how much of this was rebellion and how much was habit. Was carving the lantern a secret nod to the old gods, or just a good story for a long night? Standing here, you know the answer doesn't matter. People carve because it gives shape to fear, and fear, when shaped, becomes manageable. In towns, All Hallows Eve becomes a quieter affair. Bells for the dead, yes, but fewer now. The Church of England limits indulgences, bans prayers for souls. The Catholics keep theirs alive in private. Across the island, the night divides the same way the country does. Half fire, half silence. In Scotland and Ireland, the old Samhain customs survive with less shame. There, you find children dressed as ghosts or beasts, going door to door for a wee cake or coin. They carry torches made from bundles of rushes soaked in tallow, their laughter echoing over the fields. When you ask what the fire's for, one girl says, "To see who walks with us." She says it so matter-of-factly that you forget to ask whether she means the living or the dead. You wander through these centuries like a ghost yourself, watching the rituals shed skin after skin. You see them become safer, smaller, more symbolic, but never vanish. The bonfire is still burning, even if it hides behind news stories. As you walk away from the village, the wind carries the sound of distant crackling. A fire somewhere, bigger than it should be. Maybe for folks, maybe for saints, maybe for something older that refuses to stay quiet. The smoke curls upward into the stars, the same stars that watched over the first Samhain fires, the same sky that will watch over every porch pumpkin and flickering jack-o'-lantern to come. The world keeps changing its gods, but the dark always gets its night. You wake to the sound of waves. The air smells of salt, wood, and something faintly metallic, hope mixed with fear. The century has turned again, and people are crossing oceans now. Ships creak against the tide, filled with farmers, craftsmen, and families clutching what's left of their world. The old world is cracking under hunger and empire, and the new world waits, half promised, half imagined. You step onto a dock thick with fog. The Irish are here, the Scots, the English, all with their memories packed as tightly as their bread and tools. Somewhere among the crates and ropes, you can hear whispers of Samhain, All Hallows Eve, and All Saints' Day. 3 names for the same ghost still hiding in the human mind. The voyage is brutal. Weeks of damp air, spoiled food, and cramped bodies sleeping to the rhythm of the waves. But even on deck, As the wind howls and the sea hisses, people keep small rituals alive. A woman carves a cross into a piece of bread before eating it. A man rubs a turnip with oil and places it by the sleeping quarters for luck. The old stories survive not through power, but through habit. When the ships finally dock on American shores, you can feel the shift immediately. The land is vast, unbroken, uncharted. The settlers are wary of the wilderness. It hums with strange noises, unfamiliar animals, endless dark. For people who came from hills shaped by centuries of graves and ghosts, this new night feels almost too alive. You walk among the Puritans in the colonies, and their fear of darkness is a different breed. They reject All Saints' feasts and pagan rituals alike. To them, Halloween smells too much like witchcraft. And in a world where witchcraft has already been hunted and burned, that's dangerous company. You pass a church in Salem and hear the word Samhain, spoken with disgust from the pulpit, twisted into something devilish. The devil walks as a familiar spirit, the preacher warns, and his servants mask themselves with false holiness. You know what he means? Masks, costumes, disguises. The same symbols that once meant safety now mean sin. In these colonies, Halloween nearly disappears. The fires are put out. The children are told not to tell ghost stories. The night becomes a blank. And yet, human nature doesn't hold still for long. Out in the farmlands, among Irish and Scottish immigrants, the old ways whisper back, quietly, privately, a candle lit in a window, a carved root left at the gate, a loaf baked with a hidden coin or ring to see who'll marry next. You walk through an autumn field where a farmer and his sons are bringing in the last of the corn. The father pauses, spits on the ground, and says, "Thank the Lord for harvest." Then, softer, "And the old ones too." His son doesn't ask which ones. He just nods and keeps working. In the evenings, when the sky turns purple and the air smells of leaves, the families gather by their hearths. They tell stories, not of saints, but of ghosts. Headless horsemen, wandering lights, women in white who call your name by the river. In this wild new country, superstition doesn't die. It mutates again, taking on the shape of the landscape. The forests feel older than the Bible. The wind through the trees sounds suspiciously like whispering. If Samhain was about the end of the harvest, here it's about the unknown pressing in from every direction. The settlers brought their ghosts, but the land gave them new ones. Still, the Puritans resist. Their sermons grow louder, their bonfires smaller. They turn Halloween into a cautionary tale, a night to stay indoors. Fear becomes discipline. You can feel the tension, the quiet hunger for celebration, and the louder voice that says, "Don't you dare." 100 years pass, then another. You watch as the colonies become towns, towns become cities, and faith begins to soften around the edges. The strict walls between sacred and profane start to crumble. You hear laughter again in the autumn air. Mischief creeps back in through the cracks. On one chilly October evening in a small New England town, you spot children running through the streets carrying turnip lanterns. Their faces are smudged with soot, their laughter sharp in the cold. "Souling," one girl calls out. "Ghosts are coming." The adults scold them, but they're smiling as they do. You follow the children to a barn where a few families are gathered. They're holding a harvest supper, half Thanksgiving, half reunion. The table is covered with bread, cider, apples, and something bright orange you've never seen before. A pumpkin. It's massive compared to the humble turnip. Its skin smooth and hollow. Its inside sweet and easy to carve. Someone takes a knife and cuts out a face, a crude grin, 2 triangles for eyes, and sets a candle inside. The room glows gold, the shadows wobbling on the walls. And there it is, the jack-o'-lantern reborn on a new continent. No devils, no saints, just a fire inside a grin. The children cheer, and one of them says, "Jack's watching." Another laughs. "No, he's guarding us." The adults shake their heads, amused. The ritual has lost its fear, but kept its charm. Historians will later argue whether the pumpkin replaced the turnip out of convenience or symbolism. You already know the answer. It was both. Pumpkins were bigger, easier to carve, and native to this strange new land. But they also felt right, as if the old fire had been waiting for a new vessel. You step outside, into the cool American night. The fields stretch out forever, the stars so bright they look close enough to touch. The air is silent except for crickets and the faint creak of a barn door in the wind. Somewhere in that stillness, the old world exhales. The holiday that began as a whisper on Celtic hills has crossed the ocean. It's smaller now, humbler, hiding in laughter and flickering light. But it's alive. You can almost hear the echo of the past. The fires on the hills, the songs in the dark, the bread left for the unseen. They're all still here, just wearing new names, new faces, new masks. You breathe out and smile. The ghosts have made landfall. The year is 1846, and the air smells of earth and rain. You wake in the middle of a gray Atlantic crossing, not for conquest this time, but survival. The Great Famine has gutted Ireland. Whole villages are gone, their fields blighted black, their people starved. Ships sail west packed with the desperate, and among their few possessions, tucked between bundles of bread and blankets, are fragments of memory. You stand on a crowded deck beside a young woman, holding a rosary in one hand and a turnip lantern in the other. The candle inside trembles against the wind. "For Jack," she murmurs, half prayer, half superstition. You realize the ghosts are emigrating too. When they arrive in America, they find a country already carving its own myths. The Puritan suspicion has cooled, and the new immigrants bring back the old warmth. Bonfires, games, stories, laughter. What once was whispered becomes loud again. Halloween returns to the New World with a new accent. In the towns and cities where the Irish settle, autumn feels alive. You can smell peat smoke from backyard fires, hear the scratch of fiddles, the rough singing that always comes with cider. Children play tricks on neighbors, tying doors shut, switching signs, filling chimneys with soot. Adults shake their heads, but secretly enjoy the chaos. It's harmless rebellion, a spark against the routine of survival. One night, you follow a group of boys through the cobbled streets of New York. They carry turnips carved with crooked faces, grinning like demons. "Spirits can't follow if we're uglier than they are," one boy says, and the others laugh. Their laughter echoes down the street, a sound both mischievous and ancient. Soon, the turnip is replaced by something larger and brighter, the pumpkin. It's easier to find, easier to carve, and frankly, more theatrical. You watch a family in a small tenement hollow one out together. The mother hums while the father cuts. The children scoop the insides with spoons. When the candle is lit, the whole room glows like dawn. It's not about warding off spirits anymore. It's about belonging. The old fear has become family ritual. The newspapers begin to take notice. By the 1860s, articles mention Halloween frolics among Irish communities, apple bobbing, storytelling, music. Some describe it as quaint, others as foreign and suspicious. One column calls it an old world nuisance, but the writer can't hide his curiosity. There's something magnetic about a night that lets adults play and children rule the streets. In rural America, Halloween blends with harvest festivals. You see farmers holding barn dances lit by lanterns and strings of apples. Bonfires return, not pagan this time, just good old-fashioned warmth. Still, the rhythm is the same. The gathering at dusk, the laughter, the food, the fire. Human instinct refuses to evolve past its need for light in the dark. You wander into a farmhouse party and watch as young women drop apple peels into basins of water, trying to read the initials that form. Others gaze into mirrors by candlelight to see their future husband's face. No one admits to believing it, but the silence after the laughter says otherwise. The magic has softened, but it's not gone. It's just dressed up as fun. By the late 19th century, Halloween has started to glow beyond the immigrant neighborhoods. Children of all backgrounds pick up the habit of pranks and games. Church groups hold safe autumn socials with cider and bobbing for apples. Teachers encourage costumed plays about harvest spirits. The holiday shifts from superstition to community theater, half memory, half performance. Still, you sense a hint of the old wildness lingering. The mischief grows bolder in the cities. By the 1880s, police reports mention Halloween vandals, knocking over outhouses, stealing gates, or moving wagons onto rooftops. Adults start locking up their gardens before nightfall. It's as if the old spirits have found new hosts, teenagers. But for every trick, there's also warmth. On one October evening, you walk through a street in Boston where windows glow orange with pumpkins. Behind each one, you can hear laughter, music, stories. The Irish customs have spread like sparks across dry wood. Americans love the spectacle, the masks, the firelight, the permission to be someone else for a night. The fear is mostly gone, replaced by theater and celebration. Historians still debate whether the Irish created modern Halloween or merely rescued it. You know the truth lies somewhere between. They didn't invent the night. They reminded the world how to love it. In 1895, a newspaper in Ontario prints the first recorded phrase trick or treat, though it won't catch on widely for decades. Still, the seed is planted. You can feel the shift. The night's tone changing from reverence to fun, from whispers to shouts. A group of costumed children pass you on the street. One dressed as a ghost with a bedsheet, another with a paper devil mask, another wearing his father's old coat and calling himself a wanderer from the other side. They're laughing too loudly to be afraid. One of the mothers watching from her porch says, "We used to call this a night for the dead. Now it's for the young." Her smile is tired but proud. Better that way, don't you think? You look at her, at the glowing pumpkins, at the laughter echoing through streets that used to hold silence. You think of Samhain's fire, of Roman apples, of the soul cakes, of the turnip lanterns on gray shores. You think of every hand that carried the flame forward. Better, you whisper, and still the same. The woman nods, as if she heard you. You walk down the street as more pumpkins flicker to life, their orange light bouncing off brick and cobblestone. The air smells of sugar and smoke. You can almost imagine the old spirits watching, not angry this time, just amused, seeing how far their night has traveled. Halloween has crossed the ocean, crossed faith and famine, and found its place again. It's rough, noisy, half-tamed, and wildly alive. And as you watch the children run, their lanterns bobbing like living stars, you realize the world has just given birth to a brand new tradition, one built on laughter instead of fear. The ghosts are still here, yes, but tonight they're smiling too. The air smells like coal smoke and polished wood. The year is 1899, the century gasping its last breath, and you find yourself in a parlor lined with lace curtains and glass lamps. The people gathered here are polite, educated, and utterly fascinated by ghosts. You're in the Victorian era, and Halloween has found a new costume. Elegance. It starts quietly, as most obsessions do. Industrial cities choke on smoke, and science is rewriting everything sacred. People crave wonder again. They've built railways across continents and telegraphs across oceans. Yet they still long for proof that death isn't the end. So, they build seances instead of bonfires. You stand near the back of the parlor. The curtains are drawn tight. A group sits around a circular table, hands joined. The hostess whispers, "If any spirits are present, please make yourself known." The candlelight trembles. Someone gasps when the table gives a single, polite knock. A woman swoons dramatically, half believing, half performing. It's all theater, but the hunger behind it feels ancient. The Victorians have turned Samhain's midnight vigil into parlor entertainment. What the Celts once did around a hilltop fire, the Victorians now attempt over teacups. You slip outside, where the street lamps glow like small moons. On nearly every doorstep, pumpkins grin their flickering smiles. They've spread fast across the country now. Cheaper, brighter, safer than torches. Shop windows sell Halloween novelties, paper bats, ghost cutouts, black cat silhouettes. The holiday has entered capitalism's bloodstream, and it's thriving. At the same time, folklore is having a literary revival. You can buy ghost stories in tidy printed volumes. Poe, Le Fanu, Stevenson, James. Fear has become art. Readers devour tales of haunted houses, cursed portraits, restless spirits. The same superstitions that once terrified peasants now entertain the drawing rooms of London and New York. Historians still argue whether Victorian fascination with ghosts was skepticism or secret belief. But watching them, you sense both. They don't worship the dead anymore. They court them. In one home, a group of young women are holding a mirror game. Each one carries a candle to a darkened room, looks into the glass, and whispers, "Show me the face I'm to wed." Their laughter fills the air, high and nervous. Someone screams and insists she saw a shadow behind her own reflection. The others rush in, equal parts horror and delight. You recognize the impulse. It's Pomona's apple magic, reborn with candlelight and mirrors. The language of prophecy has shifted from gods to psychology, but the rhythm hasn't changed. Curiosity, fear, laughter. The Victorians turn Halloween into a social event. Instead of wild pranks or pagan rituals, they're parlor games. Guests bob for apples and silver bowls, tell ghost stories by the fire, and exchange favors baked into cakes. Rings, buttons, coins, each predicting marriage, fortune, or travel. The Night of the Dead becomes a night for flirtation and fun. Death is now fashionable. You attend one of these parties in Boston. The hostess, dressed in black silk and jet beads, greets you with mock solemnity. "We speak with spirits tonight," she says, then hands you a glass of punch. Behind her, a band plays softly, and the chandelier glints off a roomful of candlelit faces. In one corner, a fortune teller in a velvet shawl reads cards for a giggling couple. "You'll marry before winter's end," she says, "but beware of fog." They applaud, then move on to the table of taffy pulling. The air is sweet, sticky, and entirely devoid of dread. You realize Halloween has become domestic, safe enough to invite inside. But there's still a whisper of danger beneath the lace and laughter. Outside the city, in smaller towns and rural communities, Halloween hasn't softened quite as much. Boys still roam the dark with lanterns and noisemakers, tipping over barrels and shouting at passers-by. They call it Mischief Night, and it's tolerated like a thunderstorm, annoying but seasonal. You pass one group dragging a stuffed dummy through the streets, its head carved from a pumpkin. They shout, "Here walks old Jack," and dump it into a bonfire. Sparks leap into the sky, and for a moment, the polite parlor version of Halloween vanishes, replaced by something raw and ancient. The next day's newspaper scolds them, of course, rowdy conduct unbecoming of Christian youth. But you can tell it's half-hearted. Every culture needs one night when rules bend and shadows breathe. The Victorians, with all their manners, secretly understand that. Later, you find yourself in a quieter room, an attic filled with photographs. One frame shows a faint white blur beside a family portrait. The owner points proudly, a spirit caught by camera. Early photography and grief have birthed a new superstition. Ghosts as images, not visitations. Even technology bends toward belief when the heart wants to see the unseen. Outside, autumn deepens. Steam trains whistle in the distance. The industrial world marches on, but Halloween stays timeless. Fire becomes candlelight. Masks become etiquette. Fear becomes fascination. The line between superstition and science, between the seance and the experiment, grows as thin as the old Samhain veil. You step into the street again. Children parade by in paper masks shaped like cats and owls. Shopkeepers wave, their stores stacked with candy, lanterns, and cheap rubber bats. You can feel the pulse of the holiday gaining speed. What was once spiritual now becoming social, even commercial. The dead are no longer feared. They're invited guests. And yet, if you listen closely, under all the laughter and chatter, you still hear the same quiet hum. The sound of people asking the dark for mercy, for meaning, for memory. They've stopped calling it prayer, but it's still there. You walk past a window where a small jack-o'-lantern flickers. Its grin is uneven, its candle half melted. You think of the Celtic fires, of the turnip lanterns, of stingy Jack wandering between worlds. You realize the pumpkin's glow is not just decoration, it's lineage. The same light, reborn again and again. Inside, a phonograph crackles. A woman's voice sings softly, sweet and eerie. The year grows dim, the night grows near, but love and laughter conquer fear. And outside, under the smoky stars, you smile. The Victorians think they've tamed Halloween, turned it into polite entertainment. But you know better. The night is patient. It wears every mask you give it, and always, underneath, the same grin waits. The century turns again, and you open your eyes to the sound of engines and jazz. The year is 1912, or maybe 1920. The world is changing too fast to keep track. Gas lamps are fading, electricity hums in the walls, and Halloween is slipping out of the parlor and into the streets. You walk through a town that smells of smoke and caramel. The pumpkins are bigger, the laughter louder, and the night feels alive in a new way. Less sacred, more chaotic. The Victorian ghosts have been replaced by the raucous energy of the industrial age, when nothing is quiet and everything wants attention. It starts innocently enough. Children parade through neighborhoods wearing paper masks and store-bought costumes. Witches, skeletons, black cats. But as twilight deepens, the air thickens with a restless, youthful thrill. Mischief, once harmless, begins to tip toward mayhem. You follow a group of boys dragging soap bars across windows, tying strings to doorknobs, flipping over wagons. They call it playing Halloween. A man shouts after them, but he's laughing too. That laughter won't last long. By the 1910s, Halloween has become the most unpredictable night of the year. Broken fences, overturned outhouses, stolen gates, pranks that sometimes burn down sheds. It's chaos cloaked in tradition. Newspapers complain of Halloween hoodlums. Police patrol the streets. Adults shake their heads and say the night has lost its manners. But that's only part of the story. Halloween is also becoming something else. Public, shared, and unapologetically fun. The same towns that scold the vandals start hosting community parties to keep them occupied. Schools and churches organize costume parades. Neighbors decorate porches with paper skeletons and string lanterns. Mischief becomes managed. The night, once feared, becomes a celebration. You wander into one of these parties in Illinois, held in a school gymnasium. The air smells of popcorn and candle wax. Children bob for apples in a metal tub, their laughter echoing off the walls. A teacher in a ghost costume hands out cookies shaped like bats. The grown-ups stand by, pretending not to enjoy it as much as the kids. Historians still argue whether this transformation was moral reform or marketing genius. Either way, it worked. By taming Halloween, America had reinvented it, turning old-world superstition into new-world community. In cities, department stores catch on fast. By the 1920s, windows are filled with cardboard pumpkins, crepe paper ghosts, and plastic masks. The first mass-produced costumes appear, cheap, colorful, and safe. The holiday is no longer about spirits. It's about spectacle. You walk through one of those stores, the kind that sells everything from brooms to radios. A clerk smiles and says, "Big night coming. Better get your costume before they're gone." On a nearby display, a paper sign reads, "Halloween, a festival for all." The font is cheerful, the message clear. Fear sells, but fun sells better. Still, the mischief doesn't die overnight. In smaller towns, Halloween is still wild. You see kids riding down Main Street in stolen wagons, masked and shouting. Firecrackers go off. Windows shatter. Police wagons fill. One headline reads, "Halloween vandals wreck fence, blow up mailbox." The line between celebration and anarchy stays thin, but the rhythm of modern life, cars, telephones, electric light, starts to close that gap. The night is no longer quite as dark or mysterious. People can stay up later without fear. The world is too loud for ghosts to whisper. And yet, beneath the laughter, the old energy hums. The desire to test the edge of safety, to see how close you can get to the dark before it looks back. The Great War comes and goes, and the 1920s glitter through their brief, feverish dance. Halloween becomes part of the calendar, wedged between summer fairs and Thanksgiving. Themed parties fill hotels, movie theaters run spook nights, and candy companies begin eyeing the date as a gold mine. You attend a Halloween ball in 1928, a roaring crowd of flappers, jazz musicians, and men in cheap skeleton suits. The floor shakes with laughter and brass. Someone shouts, "To the spirits," and another answers. They're all drunk already. The old reverence has turned to parody, and somehow that feels right. In another corner of the country, in quiet rural towns, the night still belongs to the pranksters. A group of boys in Iowa stretch a wire across the road to spook carriage riders. Another in Nebraska disassembles a farmer's wagon and reassembles it on his roof. It's half mischief, half art. Adults grumble, but secretly they understand. Every generation needs one night when the rules loosen. The Celts lit fires. The Victorians held seances. These kids soap windows and move tractors. It's all the same heartbeat. In 1933, though, the laughter falters. The Great Depression deepens, and mischief turns dangerous. Fires, vandalism, smashed glass. The night cost too much. Newspapers call that year Black Halloween. Communities start searching for an antidote. a way to channel that restless energy. The answer is simple and brilliant. Candy. But not yet, not quite. That'll come in the next chapter. For now, you stand in a quiet street after midnight, the music of a distant dance fading into silence. The air smells of smoke and sugar, the last echo of autumn before the long winter. You look around at the empty jack-o'-lanterns, the torn paper decorations, the faint light still glowing in upstairs windows. The night feels different now, less spiritual, more human. Halloween is no longer about bargaining with the dead. It's about bargaining with boredom, about finding wonder in a world that's running out of mystery. You think of all the centuries behind you, the Celtic hills, the Roman orchards, the soul cakes, the witch hunts, the voyages, the famine ships, the polished parlors, and realize they all led here, to this restless American street buzzing with laughter and mischief. The mask has changed again. The fire is smaller now, but it still burns. The world has gone quiet again. It's the 1940s now, dusty streets, blackout curtains, and ration books tucked into kitchen drawers. War hums beneath everything, even across the ocean. And yet, somehow, Halloween still arrives right on schedule. You wake in a small American suburb, the kind that didn't exist a century ago. Neat rows of identical houses, front yards edged with short fences, lampposts glowing like tiny moons. The world feels fragile, but the people are trying to make it normal. Halloween helps. During the war, though, the celebration changes. With sugar rationed, there's less candy and more creativity. Children carve pumpkins from soap, make masks from old newspapers, and fill paper sacks with whatever treats the neighborhood can spare: nuts, apples, popcorn balls. It's homemade and modest, but still magic. The mischief of the early 1900s has softened into something family-friendly. Communities, remembering the chaos of the Depression years, organize safe Halloweens. The YMCA hosts costume parades. Churches hold autumn socials. Housewives decorate windows with cutout ghosts. The radio hums with swing music, and you can hear laughter again. Then, in 1947, the war is over. Sugar is back. Factories hum again, not just with weapons now, but with sweets. Candy companies smell opportunity, like wolves catching a scent. Hershey's, Mars, Brock's, all start rolling out small, individually wrapped candies. They pitch them as perfect for neighborhood goodwill. The trick-or-treat ritual, born centuries ago in soul cakes and lanterns, suddenly finds its modern shape. You watch it unfold one crisp October evening. The sun dips behind the trees, and the streets fill with children in makeshift costumes. Cowboys, ghosts, spacemen, princesses stitched from curtains. Each clutches a paper bag and a sense of adventure. They move in little packs, knocking on doors, shouting the new magic words. Trick or treat. The phrase spreads fast. At first, adults don't understand it. Some hand out nickels. Others feign confusion. A few stubborn souls give lectures about manners. But the kids are relentless. By the early 1950s, trick-or-treating is everywhere. You stand on a porch beside a woman with a bowl of candy corn. She looks nervous as the first costumed mob approaches. "Do I just give it to them?" she asks. You nod. She drops a few pieces into each bag, and the children scream, "Thank you," before sprinting off into the night. The woman laughs, a little shaky, a little surprised. "Well," she says, "that wasn't so bad." It's not just children who are enchanted. The media catches on, too. In 1952, Disney releases Trick or Treat, a cartoon starring Donald Duck and his mischievous nephews. A year later, Peanuts features Linus waiting in a pumpkin patch for the mythical Great Pumpkin. Television turns Halloween from a local tradition into a national ritual. By the mid-1950s, suburban America glows orange every October. Hardware stores sell fiberglass skeletons. Grocery aisles overflow with candy displays. Housewives compete for the best decorated porch. The night that once belonged to druids and ghosts now belongs to children in masks and advertisers in suits. Still, there's something tender about it. You walk through a neighborhood where every house light is on, every pumpkin flickers. The air smells of sugar, leaves, and safety. A little boy dressed as a pirate waves at you, his pillowcase full of candy. For once in human history, fear has turned into pure fun, and yet, you feel the faint hum of something older under the laughter. The masks, the firelight, the food offered from hand to hand. It's the same pattern, only rewritten. The living still share offerings with the dark. They've just traded spirits for sugar. Historians still argue about who invented trick-or-treating. Some trace it to souling, others to the Irish guising, still others to Depression-era pranks. But the truth is simpler. It's what people have always done when facing the unknown. Share what they have, light a candle, make a game. You stop by one house where a father carves a pumpkin with his daughter. She insists on a crooked smile, so the ghosts think he's friendly. The father laughs, but obliges. The candle goes in, and suddenly, the same ancient glow dances on the porch. The same orange heartbeat that once flickered in Celtic hills and Roman orchards. Television cements the ritual. In the 1960s, programs like The Addams Family and The Munsters turn the spooky into the lovable. Monsters become neighbors. The dead become dinner guests. Kids who once feared witches now want to dress like them. Halloween's genius lies in that inversion, turning fear into costume, dread into play. You walk through a living room where a family watches It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown on a black and white TV. The mother knits. The father smokes a pipe. The children munch candy bars, laughing when Snoopy pops out his doghouse in costume. The room glows with that easy post-war calm, a momentary peace between the living and the ghosts of the past. Outside, the street is alive with footsteps and flickering jack-o'-lanterns. Porch lights stretch into infinity. Somewhere, a group of teenagers sings an old rhyme. Trick or treat, smell my feet, give me something good to eat. You can't help but smile. It's crass, chaotic, and perfect. Humanity has finally found a way to laugh at its own fear. As the night winds down, the last children head home, their pillowcases heavy. Porch lights click off one by one, until only the pumpkins glow. The flames inside them flicker low, then steady, then dim. You stand on the quiet street, watching their smiles fade into the dark. The fire has never gone out. It's just moved house again. From hilltop to hearth, from church to streetlight, from soul cake to candy corn. The spirit of the night remains. A small, stubborn warmth against the endless dark. You breathe the cold air, thick with sugar and smoke, and realize this is the moment Halloween becomes truly modern. Safe, suburban, candy-coated, yes, but underneath, still carrying the heartbeat of every ancestor who ever feared the dark and lit a flame to keep it company. The streetlights hum like electric ghosts. It's the 1950s sliding into the 1960s, and America is glowing in neon. Cars shine like chrome skeletons. Televisions flicker in every living room. And Halloween, once a superstition, has become a spectacle. The age of the screen has begun. You find yourself standing in front of a drive-in theater under a full October moon. The lot is packed. Convertibles, station wagons, pickup trucks. The smell of popcorn and engine oil drifts through the air. On the giant outdoor screen, a man in heavy makeup moans and stumbles through a graveyard. A title flashes, The Night of the Living Dead. The crowd screams, laughs, and keeps watching. This is new. Once upon a time, people feared spirits. Now they buy tickets to see them. The ghosts have been domesticated, pixel by pixel, reel by reel. Halloween has found its perfect medium, film. In the early years, horror was polite. Bela Lugosi's cape, Boris Karloff's bolts, Vincent Price's silky menace. These were monsters you could love. They haunted your imagination, but left your sanity intact. But as the screen grows sharper, so does the darkness. The 1960s brings Psycho, The Haunting, Rosemary's Baby. The monsters move off the moors and into your house. You watch people leave the theater shaken and thrilled. They clutch their coats, glance over their shoulders, then laugh at themselves for doing it. Fear has become entertainment, a shared, safe illusion. The same ritual as always. Flirt with the dark, survive, then tell the story. At home, televisions become the new hearths. Families gather not around firelight, but phosphorescent screens. Programs like The Twilight Zone and Alfred Hitchcock Presents turn paranoia into poetry. Halloween isn't just a night anymore. It's a mood that lasts all October. Candy companies follow suit. Mars and Hershey's pump out bite-sized versions of their bars. Fun-sized, they call them, as if sugar could ward off the existential dread of modern life. Stores advertise trick-or-treat packs, weeks in advance. You walk through aisles stacked with orange packaging and smiling ghosts. Capitalism has learned the same magic druids once knew, how to summon desire with symbols. But even in all the glitter and commerce, something older hums underneath. You see it in the jack-o'-lanterns still glowing on porches, in the kids' masks, paper devils, plastic vampires, skeletons with grins a little too wide. They don't know it, but they're wearing echoes of ancient disguises meant to fool spirits. The old purpose survives, wrapped in cellophane. You visit a suburban street on Halloween night. Children in every direction, laughter bouncing off the houses. A mother in curlers waves from her porch, holding a bowl of Milky Ways. A father adjusts a cardboard robot costume for his son. Radios play upbeat tunes about spooks and witches. It's a national ritual now, a festival of suburban joy. Then you hear it, the faint creak of screen door, the flicker of wind through leaves. For a moment, everything goes still. The laughter pauses, and you feel that ancient chill again, the one that says, someone is walking close behind you. You turn, but it's just a teenager in a vampire cape, grinning through fake fangs. The spell breaks, laughter returns, and the night moves on. Historians still debate whether this era marks Halloween's peak or its dilution. Was it losing its mystery or mastering it? You decide it's both. The magic has shifted from survival to spectacle, but the emotion, curiosity mixed with fear, remains perfectly preserved. Hollywood notices. By the 1970s, studios release Halloween, a movie that not only borrows the name, but defines it. A silent mask, a small town, and the terror of something ordinary made monstrous. It's the first time the holiday becomes its own myth. The film gives birth to the slasher era, to sequels, to screams echoing in living rooms and theaters for decades. You can feel the cultural tide turning. Halloween, once about spirits and saints, now belongs to cinema and screens. It's no longer the night you fear death. It's the night you pay to see it pretend. Still, when you walk through a small town in 1968, you catch something tender between the screams. A porch light glowing through fog. A child clutching a candy bag twice their size. A carved pumpkin's candle guttering in the wind. For all the noise and neon, the heart of the holiday is still there, quiet, glowing, waiting for someone to notice. Inside one living room, a family sits watching It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown again, now in color. The father laughs, the children quote the lines, the mother adjusts the candy bowl. You can hear the same rhythm that once beat beneath Celtic drums. The comfort of repetition, of believing that if you light a candle, something good will return to you. And outside, in the cool October dark, the jack-o'-lanterns grin like patient gods, their eyes reflecting the television glow from every window. You realize that Halloween has always been about reflection, our fear mirrored back through whatever technology we build next. Firelight, candlelight, screens, they're all just ways of staring into the dark without falling in. The night deepens. The wind picks up, rustling the trees. You stand in the middle of the empty street, candy wrappers at your feet, and look at the rows of glowing pumpkins. Tiny orange portals leading straight back through time. They've been watching since the first fire on the hill, and they'll keep watching long after the screens go dark. You blink, and suddenly the world is louder, brighter, and made of plastic. The calendar says 1978, but it could be any year in the neon age. Suburbs expanding like vines, malls glowing like temples, and Halloween transforming again, this time into pop culture's favorite mask. You walk through a department store that smells faintly of rubber and sugar. The shelves are lined with cellophane packages. Witch, skeleton, clown, Frankenstein, princess. The costumes hang limp, their faces pre-molded, their smiles eternal. For the first time in history, people aren't just pretending to be something. They're buying the right to become it for one night. A kid in a Batman cape tugs on his mother's sleeve. Can I get Dracula, too? She sighs but drops both into the cart. Consumerism has replaced superstition. The ritual hasn't disappeared. It's just been mass-produced. You step outside into the late afternoon light, where lawns are cluttered with blow-up ghosts, plastic gravestones, and fake cobwebs. The neighbors compete now. Halloween is no longer a humble flicker on the calendar. It's a performance. The house with the best decorations wins the unspoken war of suburbia. And yet, there's a warmth to it. Kids still gather in packs, pillowcases slung over shoulders, darting from porch to porch under street lamps. Trick or treat, they shout, their laughter high and electric. The candy is different now. Snickers, Kit Kats, Reese's Cups, all individually wrapped and shining. The simple pleasure of sugar feels like a sacred ritual passed down from the gods of marketing. In living rooms, parents sip coffee and hand out chocolate, pretending not to sneak pieces for themselves. You watch as one father opens the door to a crowd of kids in masks. He drops candy into each bag and says, "Careful out there, monsters." A girl dressed as a vampire grins. "We're always careful," she says, and vanishes into the night. But something else is stirring in the background. Something darker, more cinematic. In 1978, the movie Halloween premieres. You're in a packed theater, the smell of popcorn thick in the air, the audience jittery. The lights dim. A haunting piano melody begins. And there he is, Michael Myers, silent, masked, and relentless. The crowd screams. Some laugh. Some hide behind their hands. And when the lights come back up, the audience claps nervously, half thrilled, half uneasy. You realize that something new has happened. Fear has come home again. The mask, once worn to ward off spirits, is now the spirit itself. Over the next decade, slashers take over the screen. Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, The Fog, Halloween 2. The genre becomes a tradition of its own. Teenagers dare each other to watch. Parents shake their heads, but secretly enjoy the thrill. For millions, Halloween isn't about candy or costumes anymore. It's about turning off the lights and seeing how much fear they could survive before laughing again. Historians still argue whether these films corrupted the holiday or saved it. You suspect both. The blood and screams on screen remind people what the night once meant. That brush with mortality, the reminder that the dark is never fully tamed. Meanwhile, real-life Halloween becomes brighter, louder, safer, at least on the surface. Costume parties replace seances. Haunted houses replace actual graveyards. Local radio stations sponsor best pumpkin contests. Candy companies flood the market with limited edition packaging, black and orange wrappers, caramel-filled pumpkins, ghost-shaped marshmallows. You walk through a 1980s supermarket under fluorescent lights. A jingle plays overhead. Make it a sweet Halloween. Rows of candy stretch endlessly ahead. The Celtic fire has become corporate gold. You can't decide if it's victory or surrender. Outside, teens in denim jackets and teased hair rush to a house party. The porch is decorated with fake cobwebs and a cassette player looping ghostly howls. Inside, someone's watching Ghostbusters on a bulky TV. The movie has turned fear into comedy, the paranormal into punchline. The laughter feels contagious. And yet, beneath all the neon and irony, you sense a flicker of sincerity. In a quiet corner, two kids carve pumpkins together, the smell of candle wax and pulp hanging in the air. One carefully cuts out a jagged grin, the other lights it. They both step back and stare. For a second, they look reverent. You recognize that expression. It's the same one the Celts wore when they watched their first bonfire burn across the hills. Halloween, you realize, has always balanced on that knife's edge between reverence and rebellion, between honoring the dead and mocking death, between faith and laughter. In the 1980s, that balance takes the form of pop culture. Part candy, part carnage, part costume. You walk down a suburban street just after midnight. Plastic skeletons swing in the wind. Porch lights blink out one by one, and the laughter fades into a hush. Somewhere, a jack-o'-lantern still flickers weakly. Its carved grin has sagged, but its eyes glow steady, defiant against the cold. That's the thing about Halloween. It never really ends. It just hides behind the next sunrise, waiting for the lights to dim again. You glance toward a nearby window. Inside, a television plays the credits to a horror movie. The screen flashes orange against the glass, painting you in its glow. You smile. The fire's still burning, digitized, serialized, monetized, but burning nonetheless. Outside, the wind carries the faint sound of laughter mixed with the rustle of leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a door creaks open and closes again. Maybe it's the wind. Maybe it's tradition. You turn to walk on, your reflection flickering briefly in a dark window. For just a second, you're not sure if it's really you looking back. You wake to a different kind of silence. The 1980s are fading, and the world feels heavier, stranger, a little more afraid of itself. Television is still glowing. The malls are still bright, but there's an unease crawling through the static. The era of excess is giving way to anxiety. And right there, caught in the middle of it all, is Halloween, glittering, beloved, and suddenly under suspicion. It begins with a story. A child, they say, bit into a piece of Halloween candy and never woke up. The news spreads like wildfire. Whisper to headline, headline to panic. Parents begin tearing open candy wrappers, checking every chocolate bar for signs of tampering. Razor blades, poison needles. It doesn't matter if the details make sense. The fear takes root faster than truth can catch it. You stand in a living room with the TV blaring. A reporter's voice quivers. Could someone in your neighborhood be turning treats into traps? The image cuts to a bowl of candy under a magnifying glass. The mother on the couch gasps and says, "We're not letting the kids go out this year." The irony hits you like cold air. After centuries of fearing ghosts and witches, humanity has finally turned its terror inward. Historians will later call it the Halloween scare of the 1980s. Sociologists will explain it as moral panic, stories feeding on themselves, looping until fiction feels like fact. But tonight, you just watch as a simple, harmless ritual trembles under the weight of distrust. You wander outside. The neighborhood looks normal. Lawns trimmed, jack-o'-lanterns flickering, kids in costumes. But something is missing. Fewer porch lights, fewer footsteps. Parents hover close behind their children, scanning every shadow. A man hands out apples and gets suspicious looks. The holiday built on trust. The knocking on strangers' doors, the swapping of gifts with the unknown, suddenly feels fragile. The irony is almost poetic. After all, Halloween started as a conversation with the dark. Now it's scared of itself. Still, people adapt. Communities organize trunk or treats in church parking lots, where candy is handed out safely from car trunks. Malls open their doors for indoor trick-or-treating. Newspapers print lists of approved neighborhoods. Fear reshapes tradition, but doesn't kill it. Then, almost mercifully, the panic fades. The truth emerges. Most of the poison candy stories were urban legend, amplified by rumor and rare tragedy. But the damage lingers. By the 1990s, Halloween has two faces, one bright and sugar-coated, the other shadowed by suspicion. You pass a supermarket aisle lined with candy bags. Each one promises safety in its sterile wrapping, slogans printed like prayers, individually sealed, factory fresh, 100% safe for kids. The language of commerce has merged with the language of comfort. The trick has always been the same. Sell protection, call it joy. And yet, the spirit of the night refuses to die. It changes costumes again. Movies like Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street fill the screens with mass killers and suburban terror. The stories feel exaggerated, but they scratch an itch, an echo of old folklore, where the threat always lurked just beyond the firelight. The suburban house becomes the new haunted forest. The monster is no longer myth. It's the neighbor, the stranger, the shadow down the hall. You watch a group of teenagers crowded in a basement, the TV glow painting their faces pale. They're watching A Nightmare on Elm Street, laughing, screaming, clutching each other when the music spikes. They know it's fake, but that's the beauty of it. Fear, bottled and safe, a performance shared with friends. The same way villagers once told ghost stories around the fire to prove they weren't afraid. Outside, the world is digitizing. VHS tapes line shelves. Halloween specials air on every channel. Cartoons, sitcoms, horror marathons. The holiday becomes a month-long brand, an aesthetic, a feeling you can buy. Pumpkins appear earlier each year. Stores fill with orange displays by September. The night that once marked the end of harvest now marks the start of holiday sales. Still, you catch glimpses of something real. A child carving a pumpkin with their grandfather. A neighbor lighting a candle in an old lantern instead of plugging in plastic lights. A porch where a bowl of candy sits unattended with a handwritten note. Take one. Be good. It's easy to call this era cynical, but standing here, watching the porch lights flicker, you sense tenderness in the imitation. People are still trying to connect to each other, to the past, to the comforting rhythm of repetition. Maybe that's what Halloween really is, a pattern too human to break. Historians will later argue whether the urban legends strengthened or weaken the holiday? You think they did both? They made people cautious, yes, but they also reminded them what Halloween had always been about: fear itself and the power of facing it together. In 1993, a new film premieres, Hocus Pocus. It's colorful, goofy, filled with witches who sing and dance instead of curse. The box office shrugs, but the kids adore it. By the next decade, it's a classic. The pendulum swings again, from terror back to whimsy, from threat back to laughter. Halloween has learned, once more, how to smile. You stand in the cool night air, the sound of distant laughter echoing between rows of houses. A child runs by dressed as a werewolf, another as a princess, another as a Power Ranger. Their candy bags swing heavy, their sneakers slap the pavement, their voices bright and unbroken by fear. Somewhere behind them, a porch light flickers out. The night hums quietly again. You can almost see the whole history of Halloween in that single moment. The balance of fear and joy, danger and delight, shadow and firelight. It's still the same story, told again in brighter colors. You walk on, your reflection rippling briefly in a dark window. Behind you, a jack-o'-lantern grins, candle burning low. The ghosts have adapted to suburbia, and they look quite at home. When you open your eyes again, the world is smaller, glowing rectangles in every hand, neon reflections on glass, the quiet buzz of Wi-Fi replacing the hum of old power lines. It's the early 2000s, and Halloween has gone digital. The first thing you notice is the light. Not candlelight or street light, but screen light. White, flickering, endless. Children no longer just walk door to door. They also surf chat rooms trading stories of haunted websites and curse videos. The ghosts have moved online. You scroll through the early internet, that pixelated wilderness where myths are reborn. Forums fill with stories of real hauntings, haunted JPGs, and videos that make your computer scream. You can almost hear the echo of old Samhain legends reshaped as creepypasta. Modern folklore built from code instead of campfire smoke. Halloween becomes a digital carnival. E-cards replace handmade decorations. Chain emails warn of bad luck if you don't forward them before midnight. Teenagers swap urban legends like Bloody Mary and the Rake, mixing medieval superstition with broadband speed. Fear has never traveled faster. By the mid-2000s, the holiday is a visual language that never sleeps. Online stores overflow with costumes, pumpkin stencils, and animatronic witches. YouTube uploads its first Halloween tutorials. Top 10 creepiest costumes. DIY haunted house. Every phone can film a ghost story now. Every user can summon one with a click. You wander through a city at dusk. The streets are the same. Jack-o'-lanterns glowing, children laughing. But now their parents trail behind holding phones, filming every moment. The old oral tradition has become digital archiving. The night will be uploaded before it even ends. In one living room, a teenager edits a Halloween short film on her laptop. A shaky camera ghost story starring her friends. They add jump scares, upload it to a new site called YouTube, and refresh all night watching the view count rise. You realize the haunted tale has gone viral. Meanwhile, the candy economy is thriving. Corporations launch Halloween-themed everything. Pumpkin spice cereal, black and orange soda, even orange-dyed fast food buns. Supermarkets stretch the season from September to November. Halloween isn't one night anymore. It's a quarter of the calendar. Historians will later argue whether this expansion diluted the spirit or democratized it. It did both. The sacred has become seasonal. Yet, that repetition, orange lights, carved pumpkins, synthetic fog, still satisfies something primal. Humans, it seems, will always need a scheduled dose of fear and comfort. Then, social media arrives, and with it, a new kind of masquerade. MySpace, then Facebook, then Instagram. Each platform a costume party, where identity itself becomes decoration. On October nights, your feed fills with witches, zombies, vampires, fairies, and pun costumes that double as personal brands. You don't just wear masks now, you post them. By 2010, Halloween has gone global. Tokyo glitters with pumpkin lights. London holds zombie parades. Mexico's Dia de los Muertos crosses paths with pop culture Halloween until the two swirl together. Sacred remembrance beside comic horror. The festival of fear becomes a worldwide language. You scroll through photos from every continent. Jack-o'-lanterns in Brazil, trick-or-treating in Dubai, pumpkin patches in Australia. The same grin stares back from everywhere. For the first time in history, Halloween belongs to the planet, not a people. But the digital world brings new hauntings too. In dark corners of the web, anonymous creators upload short horror stories that spread like viruses. Slender Man, Marble Hornets, The Backrooms. They aren't tied to one date or culture. They're born of code, fueled by imagination. Proof that the ghost story will never die. It just changes file format. You sit in a quiet apartment on Halloween night, the glow of a laptop replacing candlelight. Outside, the city pulses with LED decorations. Inside, millions of people are streaming horror movies simultaneously. Paranormal Activity plays on screens worldwide. The same invisible terror replayed across time zones. The fire circle has become broadband, the shared scream now global. And then comes a selfie. The costume no longer fades when the night ends. It's immortalized online. Each year, hashtags like hashtag spooky season and hashtag 31 nights of Halloween gather billions of posts. The holiday becomes a digital performance, a celebration of creativity more than fear. You can almost hear the ancestors chuckling in disbelief. They paint their faces, photograph themselves, and call it ritual. But you know better. It's still ritual. Still that ancient impulse to become someone else for a while. To step out of your own skin under the watchful moon. Whether the mask is bone, paper, latex, or a filter, it serves the same purpose. Historians still debate what this means for the future of belief. Some say technology killed mystery. Others say it simply uploaded it. Watching the blue light flicker across people's faces, you suspect the latter. The ghosts are alive and well. They just haunt algorithms now. You scroll through a feed of pumpkin memes, horror trailers, haunted TikToks, and viral ghost caught on camera clips. Every one of them, at its core, is a candle in the dark. Another way of saying, we're still here, and so are they. Outside, fireworks crackle over a skyline of glass. A drone display forms glowing bats that dissolve into pixelated ghosts. Down below, kids in LED costumes race from door to door, their candy buckets flickering like lanterns. The air smells of caramel and ozone. You close your eyes for a moment, and it's as if you can hear both timelines overlapping. The monks chanting, the villagers singing, the Victorians laughing, the teenagers screaming, the Wi-Fi routers buzzing. A single pulse connecting every October that ever was. The lights, the laughter, the fear, they've all become code now. But the meaning hasn't changed. Halloween has always been the night humanity rehearses the dark and proves it can still wake up smiling. And as the digital ghosts drift through your feed, smiling pumpkins, dancing skeletons, hashtag hauntings, you realize something quietly comforting. The fire is still burning. It just lives inside the screens now. The air tonight feels heavier. The decade has turned again, 2020 and beyond, and the world is different. The streets are quieter now. The masks no longer made of latex or makeup, but of cloth and caution. You step outside into an October that hums with distance. The global pandemic has rearranged everything, even Halloween. You walk past empty porches glowing faintly with plastic pumpkins, their candles battery-powered instead of real flame. The sidewalks are bare. The air smells of disinfectant instead of caramel. Somewhere in the distance, a child's laughter rings out, muffled behind fabric, and you realize you're witnessing a version of the holiday no one planned for. Halloween in quarantine. At first, it seems impossible. No trick-or-treating, no parties, no haunted houses. The traditions that depended on closeness suddenly turn dangerous. But human beings are stubborn. They invent new rituals faster than fear can stop them. You scroll your phone. There it is, digital Halloween. Kids parading their costumes over video calls. Parents organizing candy hunts in backyards. Neighborhoods setting up drive-by trick-or-treating, where children hold out buckets from car windows while neighbors wave from porches. The ghosts have gone contactless. You join a virtual haunted house hosted by a theater troupe over Zoom. Each actor performs in their own home, lights flickering, voices whispering through lag and static. It's imperfect and eerie, and somehow more authentic than anything a fog machine could create. The screen itself becomes the veil, the same thin barrier that ancient Celts once imagined between worlds. Historians still argue whether the pandemic years marked the death or rebirth of communal Halloween. You can already tell, it's rebirth. The holiday bends but never breaks. When restrictions fade, the rebound is explosive. Streets bloom again with orange light. Houses erupt with decorations. Giant inflatable spiders, synchronized light shows, plastic skeletons scaling rooftops. People crave celebration, contact, the electric relief of laughter after fear. Halloween becomes therapy, a shared exhale after the long isolation. You walk through a suburban block in 2022. Speakers blast eerie soundtracks. A mechanical witch cackles on every porch. A child dressed as a nurse offers candy from a gloved hand. A strange, sweet symbol of the times. Safety first, she says with a grin. You nod. The holiday has learned to coexist with caution. Meanwhile, online, Halloween culture thrives like never before. TikTok and Instagram flood with spooky season trends, pumpkin carving montages, DIY ghost photography, slow-motion candlelight dances. Makeup artists transform themselves into skeletons and sirens under ring lights. The holiday isn't confined to a single night anymore. It's a month-long art project. You realize you're watching something ancient reinvent itself yet again. Samhain's face has gone viral. Then come the dark aesthetics, the cottage goth, and Halloween 365 movements. People start decorating in October and never stop. Cobweb lace, flickering lanterns, pumpkins left on porches until December. For some, it's comfort. For others, rebellion. Either way, the season refuses to end. The line between Halloween and everyday life blurs. The holiday becomes a style, a mood, an algorithmic season that loops endlessly on your feed. And yet, even in the swirl of hashtags and LED fog, you find glimpses of the old heartbeat. Families gathering again to carve pumpkins. Children running through leaf-strewn yards. The candlelight returning, real, warm, flickering. Humanity still can't resist lighting a flame against the dark. You stop by a park where a community night is underway. Food trucks glow under string lights. Teenagers in thrift store vampire outfits pose for selfies. A local band plays a jazzy version of Monster Mash. On the grass, families sit wrapped in blankets, watching a projector screen showing Hocus Pocus 2. The air smells of cinnamon and popcorn. You can feel it. How far the night has traveled to get here. 2,000 years, a dozen disguises, and yet it still feels familiar. The same mixture of laughter and unease. The same question behind every smile. What waits beyond the dark? And what will we do to keep it friendly? Historians, again, will argue. They'll call this era post-spiritual Halloween. Say it's all about nostalgia and aesthetics. But you know better. Underneath the digital filters and candy wrappers, the original ritual remains. Acknowledging the unknown, honoring the cycle of death and renewal, even if we call it fun now. As you walk home, the night hums with LED ghosts and projection map graveyards. Every house flickers like a digital bonfire. You glance at one doorway where a family has left out a small bowl of candy with a handwritten note. Take some. Be kind. We're all just passing through. It stops you cold. For a moment, you can almost hear the echo of ancient voices. The Celts leaving food for spirits, the villagers baking soul cakes, the pilgrims lighting candles for the departed. Every era has written the same sentence, just in different ink. You whisper a thank you to the air and keep walking. The moon hangs low, pale and constant, like an ancient witness refusing to blink. Halloween has survived plague, war, religion, industrialization, commercialization, and now digitization. You can feel it settling into its new form. Less about death, more about connection. It's the same heart beating inside a brighter machine. A wind picks up, scattering candy wrappers across the street like fallen leaves. Somewhere, a motion-activated skeleton bursts to life, cackling into the night. You can't help but laugh. It's all absurd, all temporary, all beautiful. You glance up one last time. The sky is full of satellite glints, our modern constellations. And for a heartbeat, they look like sparks from a bonfire on a Celtic hill. The fire has simply changed shape again. You wake to a night that doesn't quite end. It's the present now, whatever that means. And Halloween has become more than a date on a calendar. It's a rhythm that hums all year long, pulsing through culture like a friendly ghost who refuses to leave. You walk down a city street bathed in soft orange light. Storefronts display mechanical bats and scented candles with names like Witch's Brew and Haunted Hearth. Cafes sell pumpkin lattes in July. Streaming platforms run 31 nights of Halloween, marathons that begin in mid-September. The season has stretched itself thin and wide, an endless autumn looping on repeat. But the wonder hasn't faded. It's evolved. Halloween today is both nostalgia and innovation, ancient ritual and algorithm. You can visit a virtual haunted house through VR goggles, or buy a ghost hunting EMF app for your phone. Theme parks spend millions crafting 3D fog, projection ghosts, and animatronic demons that blink in perfect time with thunder. Somewhere, an AI writes ghost stories while another designs haunted soundscapes. The Festival of the Dead has gone high-tech. Yet, the feeling, standing in the chill October air, watching candlelight dance through a jack-o'-lantern's grin, still hums with something primal. The same warmth, the same awe, the same quiet defiance against the dark. You find yourself at a modern Halloween parade. The air vibrates with bass-heavy remixes of old monster tunes. The crowd is electric. Witches on roller skates, zombies covered in glitter, toddlers dressed as astronauts, grandparents in matching skeleton hoodies. Every generation, every style, one shared grin. The old fear has finally become community. You overhear someone say, "It's not even about scary stuff anymore. It's about being someone else for a night. They're right, and they're wrong. That's always been what it was about. Becoming, pretending, transforming. It's the same impulse that drove Celts to wear animal skins by their fires, Romans to bob for apples, Victorians to whisper into mirrors. You glance up, and the moon looks almost identical to the one that watched those people centuries ago. Time folds a little. Historians still argue what Halloween means now. Some call it pure consumerism, a sugar rush of nostalgia. Others call it cultural survival, a living palimpsest of every civilization's relationship with death. Maybe it's both. Maybe that's why it lasts. Because humans, no matter how advanced, still crave the ritual of light in the darkness. Fear made safe, chaos made beautiful. You stop by a park where people gather for a candlelight walk for the departed. It's part Halloween, part Dia de los Muertos, part mindfulness retreat. The lines between traditions blur easily now. Candles float in jars along the path. Faces glow softly in reflection, and the air feels holy without needing a name. In that hush, you realize what Halloween has always been trying to say. That death is part of the story, not its ending. That every laugh in the dark is an act of faith. That the line between the living and the gone isn't a wall. It's a door we've been decorating for 2,000 years. And tonight, the door is open again. A child runs by dressed as a skeleton, tripping on his cape. His father catches him, lifts him up, and together they light a small candle at the edge of the path. The flame flickers wildly, almost going out, then steadies. You feel something deep in your chest, an old warmth that doesn't belong to this century, but fits perfectly inside it. You walk on, past drone-lit skies and laughing crowds, past neon fog and real candle smoke. The layers of history blur into one long night. Samhain fires on the hills, Roman orchards under harvest moons, medieval prayers whispered for souls, Puritan shadows, immigrant songs, candy wrappers, VHS screams, TikTok ghosts. Every century left its footprints here. You're standing in all of them at once. The music from the parade fades behind you. The city quiets. Ahead, the street opens into a small hill. You climb it slowly, the wind brushing against you like a familiar hand. At the top, you stop and look back. Thousands of tiny lights shimmer across the landscape. Candles, porch bulbs, phone screens, each one a spark of the same story. And for a long moment, you feel that same thin veil again, the one the Celts once felt, the one that's never really lifted. The difference is that you're not afraid of it anymore. You take a deep breath of cold night air, and it smells of everything. Wood smoke, candy, rain, memory. Somewhere in the distance, laughter mingles with the whisper of leaves. Halloween isn't about death or fear anymore. It's about persistence. About remembering that no matter how dark the world gets, people will always find a reason to light something, or something silly, and share something sweet. The fire still burns. It just lives in 1,000 smaller flames now. Digital, electric, human. You turn to leave, the wind following close behind like a friendly ghost. And as the night stretches toward morning, the lights below flicker gently, one by one, like stars learning to rest. The story slows now. The wind softens. You feel the night exhale. The fires of Samhain fade into embers. The candles of All Hallows flicker low. The laughter of trick-or-treaters dissolves into memory. What remains is the hush, the part of Halloween that isn't about fright or spectacle, but peace. You picture yourself back in your room, the world outside, quiet again. Maybe there's a pumpkin on the windowsill, its light nearly out. Maybe there's still a faint smell of sugar and smoke in the air. The sounds of the night, footsteps, leaves, distant voices, grow slower, softer, gentler. For thousands of years, people have ended this same night the same way, by taking one last look at the light they made and letting it fade naturally. You do the same now. You realize that Halloween, beneath every mask and myth, has always been a lullaby for the human spirit, a reminder that darkness isn't final, that we can laugh at it, dance with it, even wear it for a while. That's what makes us different from the ghosts. We know how to rest. So, as you breathe out, let the old stories settle in your chest like warmth. Let the ghosts retreat to their side of the veil. Let your thoughts drift towards sleep. The fire burns low. The candlelight trembles. The air turns still. The story is over now. You made it through the night.